All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're at. Thank you for tuning in. I'm very excited to be here. My name is Latrice Torres, and I am the CEO of LeaderKeys Consulting. We are a small but really powerful bunch that brings leadership and career consulting and strategy to individuals, to teams, to organization with a goal of making people awesome. That is the whole reason why we exist. I'm very excited today because I have a guest that I have been trying to figure out when I can get her to be a guest on here, Savine DaCosta. And I'm just really excited to have her here. And before I even get started with getting into it, I just want to, Savine, first say thank you at the beginning of this, so that just in case we were like talking too much at the end, and I don't forget to just really say thank you publicly and give you your flowers to everybody who is watching. So, Savine, thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking your time to be here today. You were all in for a treat. Like Savine DaCosta, I was like, where do I start with introducing her? So I was like, give me a bio so I can do it properly and read it and give everybody a little bit of background on just who they're about to experience. Get out your pen and paper. You're going to want to take notes. We are talking about navigating disability, but we're going to do that through Savine's story. So let me just give you a little background about Savine in advance before we even get started. So Savine DaCosta holds the role of clinical trial diversity site lead at Biogen. Her responsibilities include implementing strategies to ensure diverse representation in clinical research that mirrors disease epidemiology. She focuses on fostering trust in underrepresented communities through various educational initiatives. Additionally, she spearheads clinical trial diversity programs to establish lasting connections with communities and patients. With over 25 years of experience in the pharma biotech industry, Savine has excelled in sales, marketing, patient engagement, and now diversity, equity, and inclusion. She is known for her ability to bring people together, communicate effectively, and provide innovative solutions. She earned a bachelor's degree in business administration from Boston University and then a master's in business administration from Eastern University. She currently lives in St. David's, Pennsylvania, with her husband, Tony, and their son, Gabe, who has cerebral palsy. As a dedicated caregiver to Gabe, Savine understands the challenges faced by patients with chronic conditions and their caregivers. This firsthand experience drives her to advocate for improved healthcare options and to promote clinical research as a viable treatment avenue. All right, with all of that said, Savine is a sought-after speaker, which is why I asked her to be here, on topics such as social determinants of health, underrepresented and underserved communities, chronic illnesses, rare diseases, autoimmune diseases, and vaccines. And her area of expertise crosses many boundaries. So program implementation and management, community engagement, project management, relationship development, contract development, vendor management, mentoring, and innovation. Oh, it's a mouthful, but she is amazing, is what it doesn't say on here. So I'm just going to add that part. She is passionate about finding innovative solutions to conventional problems. And let me tell you, she is a master at doing that. In her free time, she enjoys photography, basketball, and indulging in a good book. So we didn't really rehearse this, Savine, but I can't say have indulging in a good book without asking, what's the book that you're all in right now? Maybe we can get a book list going on in the comments.
I haven't had the opportunity to read a good book lately because it is the summertime and it's flower time. So I've been out taking pictures recently. Ooh. So if anyone has a good book for me, I'm all in. So this is my time of year to get my pictures in and work on my photography and some crafting. So I just recently started to learn how to hand knit the big cozy comfy blankets. So yeah, I just did my first blanket
Oh, that's right. We were talking about that because I love that, like those big chunky blankets, right?
Yes, I
Oh,
just did
yeah. Yeah,
those.
yeah. We were just talking about getting together, so I may have to put my order in for a big, comfy, cozy blanket because
I
I could
got you. I got
crochet
you.
a blanket, but like crocheting a blanket, yeah. I'm at the point
No
of only doing
needles needed.
yeah,
No needles
exactly.
needed.
It's just
No
kind of like your
expertise in
hands, right?
patterns. Yep,
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. Okay, cool. I really, really love that. Well, thank you for sharing that. I love to just learn a little bit more about who I'm talking to. And I want everybody also to get a good idea and some insight into who we're talking to. So just set the stage a little bit. This session is being recorded. Anybody will be able to view this session later on LinkedIn, but also it will live on our YouTube page as well forever. We are LeaderKeys Unlocked on all socials. So just look us up and you'll be able to find us and find a recording of this if you missed this or you want to share this with somebody else. So let me just put that out there. But also, I now want to just kind of flip it over to you, Savine, to talk about that. This is Disability Pride Month, which I think at one time was known as Disability Awareness Month. And I kind of love this pivot to it being Disability Pride Month. So with that said, and that kind of change, what does that mean for you as a caregiver to make that type of pivot? What does that mean?
It means a lot. First of all, let me say thank you to you. What people don't know is Latrice and I have a history. We met over a year ago, and Latrice was my executive coach, and we've just kind of kept this relationship going. She is absolutely amazing, multifaceted, and she is just always there for me. So I appreciate her for that. And so to answer
It really
your
is flower
question,
season.
it is. So I give you your flowers
Right?
as well. She's helped me expand my definition of being uncomfortable, becoming comfortable in uncomfortable situations. I thought I was good at that, but she's just helped me understand that I can be even better at that. So about this being a Pride Month, it's part of how I live my life and how I've taught my son to grow up. He was born at 1.5 pounds. So this life that he lives, he doesn't know anything different. But I say the world will tell him what's wrong with him, and it's my job to have him understand what's right with him. And that's kind of how we live. So for this to have that shift to show pride, it's something that helps people in this community understand that it's okay for them to be exactly who they are and be proud of it. Because what choices do they have but to live in this world exactly who they are and to be proud of that? And we should be proud of the journey that they're on. So that shift is very meaningful because it sets a standard.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, I really love seeing this, and I even think the tag for this year is a life like yours, and I think that that's also really a great tagline for people to remember as well. Is that we're all human beings that are walking this earth, and the way that we move around each other and we accommodate each other, whether we are able-bodied, disabled, it doesn't matter. We are constantly doing that, and some of the things like I'm always talking about in this, especially in the DEI world, is that one accommodation for someone is usually going to impact and have ripple effect and impact all different types of people. So like it is good human
we were just
right decency, right, to think about these things. So
it is, yeah.
Yeah. So
My husband and I were just having a conversation. Yeah, my husband and I were just having a conversation, and I'm very fortunate because my husband and I, we've been married for 31 years. So statistically, that's an anomaly, and having a differently able child in this relationship also beats other statistics because traditionally marriages fail when you have to deal with a lot of the situations we've had to deal with. But I was writing down some thoughts that I had, which I typically do when we're going through difficult situations. And one of the things I said is Gabriel, who's our son, we call him Gabe. I said, when you think about his journey, he smiled through every missed milestone in his life because he's missed every single one of them. And he has created his own journey. He's created his own milestones.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And so when we talk to our healthcare providers and we worry about those milestones, worry about the ones that your child is going to create, because that is your new map. That is your new journey that you will be on, because our children don't go by the traditional milestones that typically developing children will go by. So don't get upset. Don't get frustrated when you look at the maps and the growth charts that they put before you, because those don't apply to us.
Mm-hmm.
You have to go into this. One of the things that I like to tell people, and I often talk to parents and families when they enter this journey, is I say a big thing that you have to do is you have to grieve. You have to grieve for what you thought you were going to go through. For me, it was a birth. Because he was 1.5 pounds, he was 13 weeks early. So you have to grieve for what is typically considered normal. And I use those words, typically considered normal, because really what is normal? And then in order to fully accept the wonderfulness that you're going to have before you. And I put it that way because my son is absolutely amazing, and everything that we go through with him, we learn something new. And we discover something new. And sometimes we invent all of these different ways and coping mechanisms that I would have never had the opportunity to even think about had I not been on this journey with him. And what we're able to teach our medical teams and work with them and bring them out of their comfort zones and working with us, who would have thought?
Yeah, definitely. So tell us about Gabe.
Sure. Gabe was born at 1.5 pounds. He's actually coming up on his 23rd birthday.
Okay.
When he was born, they told us that his chances of survival were extremely slim, because young African-American boys are the least likely to survive at that age and at that weight. And my husband, I was sick. There was nothing wrong with him initially. I was suffering from a condition called HELLP syndrome, and my organs were shutting down. So the only course to correct that was to perform an emergency C-section and to take him. So they took him to the neonatal intensive care unit, and my husband was watching through the window, and he actually punched the nurse in the nose as they were trying to intubate him. So they called him Mr. Feisty.
Yeah.
So we kind of thought at that point, we're in for an interesting ride. I spent my first 5 days after he was born in the intensive care unit trying to recover, to get my levels back up. He spent 5 months in the neonatal intensive care unit. At 5 months, he was only 7 pounds. He had to be trached. And then not long after that, he came home, and then he had to have a feeding tube placed for failure to thrive. So there are multiple things going on with him. Failure to thrive, he had a trach because his airway was just horrible. So I can throw out a bunch of medical terms here that might mean something to some people that are listening in or not, but essentially his airway was extremely small. And with all of having being on a ventilator for an extensive amount of time, there was damage there. So having a trach put in, which is the breathing tube, having the feeding tube put in, and him being extremely small, he required around-the-clock care. So we winded up being able to have nursing in our home for him. So he was not placed in a home. We kept him home. What I did was I took the time off for the cesarean, and then I went back to work. As it happened, I was in sales, and the hospital he was in my territory. So I would get up early and go to work. Then I would go to the hospital and stay there till about 11 or 12 o'clock at night, go home, get a little bit of sleep, and basically rinse and repeat. keep doing that until it was time for him to come home. So he came home. Then I took leave to be home with him. I made the decision to go back to work because I felt like if I was his only care provider, then he would only know me. He would only know my husband. This way, he would have more people in his life. He could experience more. And that worked out well. I had a great team of nurses that came in that cared for him. They would read to him. They would talk to him. They would care for him. He had his trach in for 5 years. He had his airway reconstructed. They took a piece of his rib, put it in his airway. That didn't work. When he was about 2, the other part of his airway collapsed. He coded on me at home. I had to do CPR on him and bring him back. Lesson learned. Anybody with a baby, learn CPR. Big advocate of teaching CPR, having people learn CPR for choke hazards, for anything that could happen. So trach went back in. He kept it till he was 5. Essentially, Gabe has cerebral palsy. He's what's called a spastic quad. It affects every area of his body, including his tongue. So he has trouble swallowing. He has trouble coordinating what we would call the suck, breathe, swallow. And so he's limited on what he can take in by mouth for eating. So the feeding tube is a permanent fixture in his life. So he receives a night feed. He cannot turn himself. So he has a night nurse that cares for him, and he has a day nurse because there are no facilities really that can incorporate him. He can do a little bit of everything, but not a whole lot of everything. So he's a full assist. Very early in this journey, we were afraid of communication issues for him. We had speech therapy on board. They said he couldn't sign. They said he couldn't do this. So I said, what can he do? Like, you're not just going to be here and tell me what my son can't do. What can he do?
What can he do?
So we worked with wrapping his hands so he could isolate his fingers. Well, now he fully communicates with an iPad and some communication technology. So he speaks with an iPad. So he can fully communicate with you in that way. But it was a growth process. We started at 5, the technology assessment. He started with like 2 hits. Mom, dad, yes, no. And now his iPad has 84 squares and pages and pages and pages of information. So when I speak with families of kids that are nonverbal, because he has no natural language, no natural speech, and they tell me their children can't communicate, I say, well, what does that mean? Do they brighten up when you walk into a room? Do they smile at you? Nonverbal communication. They're like, yes. I'm like, do they move their eyes? They're like, yes. I'm like,
they're communicating.
Then let's look at a technology assessment for them. Because if they can move their eyes, there may be a light that they can put on their forehead where they can move across things. Do you think they're understanding things? Let's take this to technology professionals and let's see. So somewhat of a techie because of my son and having to understand what technology means in this world. So, you know, he is considered intellectually disabled because he's delayed, but that doesn't mean he can't communicate and can't learn. It's just a matter of how does he learn? You know, he incorporates things differently. So we work on that. He uses a wheelchair. He drives a 450-pound wheelchair. So we had to put the cones out in the driveway and work on turns. When he went to school, they put a line down the hallway in school so he knew which side of the hallway was his. And everybody in the high school knew that was Gabe's side of the hallway and worked with him on that. So it's just a matter of how we communicate with people and getting him to function and operate in our world and getting our world to understand how he functions and operates and working collaboratively to make that happen for him. He's extremely happy. He was a poor reader. So they would videotape his test. And he loves Audible and he loves books. But he could tell you if he saw a movie in a book, he could tell you what the differences were. So zoned in on that. So there are all of these things, and then working with healthcare providers and medical teams and getting them to think out of the box.
Yeah.
When you look at him on paper, he's one person. When you're around him in person, he's another person. So getting doctors to get their heads out of the computer and off the papers and engage with him and see the potential. My son has never been in a multiple disabilities classroom. He's always been in a life skills classroom because he has the ability to learn and he has the ability to boss people around and manage.
I love that you said boss people around. So he's typical. Like that's about right.
Absolutely. The one thing that I'm super proud of is I was told that by the time he understands his disabilities, he would be extremely depressed. And he's never been on depression medication. And I have no problem with depression medication for people if they need it. But we've been able to show him that his wheels on his wheelchair are his legs and his iPad is his voice. And that is okay.
Yeah.
That he can accept that
you're telling your story, and as you're doing that, the thing that keeps replaying in my mind is that the support system he has and this you and your husband alone has been like so crucial to how he has grown and developed and carved out his space in this world. And like you are the most inquisitive person I think I've ever met, but you're inquisitive always with like this lens of growth and like that, which is different from other people who just ask questions. You always have this lens of growth and possibility. And like, I think that's an extreme advantage to have in this. Where does that come from? Because I literally have never met anyone who has it to the degree that you do. Was that before this? Did you bring that into it? Have you developed that over time? Because I think that's a big part of this of this story.
I think I am the last of 11 children. I'm the baby, and I grew up in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and I just didn't want to stay there. And so I think a part of that is me on my journey, and trying to figure out in my growth how I could do things differently than even my siblings, and what else is there for me, and how do I figure things out? Even with my son, there weren't a lot of people that I could go to and ask certain questions of and figure things out for him. So I had to look, I had to research, I had to look at other diseases and see what they were doing and figure out what would work. And things weren't working for him. So I had to fail fast and figure out something else and test and try. I mean, my basement was full of toys that just didn't work for him. So what did work? What could we put in his hands that he could grab? And I couldn't stand when someone told me no. I mean, my husband would say, you have a visceral response to someone saying no to you. And I'm like, okay, because that's like a dead end. And he's alive and he's breathing. And I can tell you, we had an orthopedic doctor, and my son, someone said he would not go to the bathroom. And I didn't understand that because we didn't have anyone with disabilities in our family. And that's not how my mom raised any of us. So I put him on a potty chair like my mom did everybody else in a corner and was like, okay, we're going to do this. And we're going to do the potty dance. And we're going to give you a magazine. And we're going to do this and that. And he understood the concept. And I took wet paper towels and I put them in his hands. And I said, this is wet. And when you feel like this, you should feel uncomfortable. I didn't know whether he would get it or not, but you know what? It was worth a try, you know? And so he got it. And by the time he was 3, he was going to the bathroom. And the people at the hospital were like, this doesn't happen because he's moderate to severe in his condition. So then we learned the sign for potty and we just modified it. And he started saying it. And the problem I had was when he went to school, they weren't so willing to get with the program. So they had to buy a special bathroom chair for him to be able to go. And my son was like, okay, now that I've learned this, I'm not going to the bathroom on myself. Because that's uncomfortable, you know? So it's like we do these things and then we learn them and we do well, and then we've got to bring everybody else along with us. So, and that's been kind of my story, you know, being an African-American woman in this family that I was in, going to a school outside of my neighborhood, being in these classes, being the only person of color, breaking the norm. And so I guess I just carried that through to instead of looking at what's not possible, trying to figure out what is possible, and then just trying to make it work.
Yeah, I mean, when you have there's so many, you know, intersections that you're dealing with in your case, and each one of them by themselves already are very much empowering to make you like come up with solutions where someone will tell you there aren't going to be. So like to just compound those things on top of them and have to work your way through each one of those challenges, I can see making you stronger and stronger and more willing and more vocal about the way you go about getting those solutions.
It's also caused me to come out of a comfort zone because it's scary looking someone that you consider at the top of their game in a professional in a medical community as a doctor and saying, no, I'm going to fire you because you don't have my person's best interests at heart, which is what we had to do with an orthopedic surgeon, because he said, oh, just because he's in pain doesn't mean we have to do anything. And so I started that story about the potty chair, and my son was sitting like crooked on the toilet and saying he was in pain, and he never complains about pain. So we went to the doctor. We were like, this is not right. And he was like, oh, well, you know, statistics say that these kids have hip issues and there's really nothing we can do about it. And I'm like, oh, no, wait a minute. No, this is not right. You know, the timing is not right. You need to do something. So we were leaving to go to another hospital system for another opinion. And then his rehab physiologist was like, no, I agree with you. Let's get another look at him. And that doctor was like, no, his hips are off. We need to do something about this. And by the time we got him into surgery, the hip was almost completely out of the socket. And he needed to have a metal rod put in his hip to realign everything. And he was like, no, this was right. You were right to make that call. We went back to the doctor, the original doctor, to kind of talk to him about where he was wrong instead of just letting it go. It was a good learning, you know, session for him. And he told the residents, yeah, well, you know, this is why we do this. And I was like, no, give my son his props. He went through the therapy and we need to have this discussion because I never want you to say this to another family.
Yeah, exactly.
And now we see him and he's like, yeah, lesson learned. You know, I'm like, but are you going to do this again? Like, that's my thing. I'm not just going to let it go because I don't want anybody else to go through what I went through with you. And the hospital was like, but we really don't like you to change specialists. And I'm like, I don't care. I don't care. We're doing it. And then went on to tell other people how to change specialists within the hospital system. So it's okay if I do it, but I need to let other people know what their rights are and how they can do it too.
That's the big piece right there. I think sometimes when I'm talking to people, and especially people who like label themselves an advocate, and when I hear that term, I think, I don't know, and it may just be me, I think really big picture, and I'm thinking more of not just the advocacy for the situation that you're in right now, but how that advocacy is going to impact somebody in the future. Like whatever I do and accomplish, it's for the greater good so that someone else can learn from it or not have to go through the experience or learn how to navigate the experience. And that's what I'm hearing from you. And that's what I feel like you do so well, is because you always have that in mind as well.
I try. One of the things that we had to do that we weren't prepared for is the transition from pediatrics to adult care.
Yeah.
And I
I'm
like to
glad you made
say
that segue. Yeah.
pediatrics is like a warm hug, and then going into adult care is like going into the cold tundra. And maybe that's not the most accurate, but that's how I felt.
That's how I felt.
And luckily, the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia has a really good transition program where they work with you to help you find doctors and transition your records and stuff. But for us, we live about an hour away from there. So finding a primary care physician close to us was extremely important, because sometimes we don't have an hour to get down there, but most of his specialists are in Philadelphia. And it was incredibly hard to find a primary care physician because they came up with every excuse under the book just to say why they could not care for him, because he's in the wheelchair. It's harder to transition him to a table, or they can't weigh him. And I'm thinking, really? Is this what we're doing? So, yeah. So I usually am very prepared when I go to the doctor's office, because I feel like 100% of the responsibility is always on my husband and I to have his records. Even though now we have electronic health records, my thought is, well, what happens if the computer's down? What happens is this: I want to 100% take advantage of my time with a healthcare provider. Well, we go into one of the appointments and the records aren't there. And she's looking at me. I'm like, oh, no, that's okay. I have a list of all of his doctors. I have a list of all of his meds. I have a list of all of his hospitalizations. 4 papers I have everywhere I go printed out. But, you know, it's hard because we found a good doctor for him. He's transitioned now with all of his specialists, and we're on a maintenance program. And the first thing this woman says to me is, why are you here? And I'm like, why do you think I'm here?
Right.
You know, I'm like, yeah. So, I mean, we got all of that settled, but it's also anxiety for him. Yeah. Because you figure he's been with his pediatric doctors all of his life, and now he's got to meet all of these new doctors that he doesn't know, he doesn't trust. And then they're saying stuff like that to him, and he's looking at me like, can we go? Like, if they don't know, why am I here? Then why am I here? So talk therapy with him is a big deal in these transitions, and having him understand like who these folks are and why we're here with them. And so now we're through that. But one of the things we're doing with the University of Pennsylvania is putting together a mentoring program for the kids that are transitioning into the adult program, so that they have folks there, not only from the medical side, but from the personal side, to help them with that transition even further. So that's been something that we've been establishing since we've now been in adult care, so that you land appropriately, and still preparing them that some of the things that they did in pediatrics, they still need to do in adult care, and even more so to make sure that everything's taken care of. So we're continuing to do that. And Gabriel, my son, was he did his own advocacy because he was the ambassador for the Children's Hospital of Pennsylvania. He's been doing work like that since he was little. Easter Seals was a big part of our life. He was an ambassador for Easter Seals. He was an ambassador for Children's Hospital. His face has been plastered in Walmart and places like that. And so now University of Pennsylvania is trying to figure out how they can work with him to continue that on, because it's socialization for him as well. And he likes doing it. He likes telling his story his way. So he's going to try and work with them and continue some of that work.
Yeah. Good. I think that's phenomenal. Yeah. What I love is that it keeps him driving that. He's driving that activity and doing the things that really fuel him and bring him energy. So that's really positive. I love that.
Yeah, and it continues with his voice, because when he turned 18, we had to take legal guardianship of him, my husband and I. And some people think because you go through that process, the individual no longer has a voice, because it is extensive. You have to go to court. You have to go before a judge. You have to have a background check. You have to prove that you are a fit guardian for your own person, your own child.
You've been taken care of.
Exactly. You have to have a doctor testify on your behalf. You have to have references. And in speaking to some of the families, there are other routes you can take. You can do power of attorney. We chose to have legal guardianship of person and estate for our son because he is so involved. He is actually declared an incapacitated adult. And I chose that route so that no matter what environment we're in and no matter what the circumstances are, we can advocate for him. We can be in any room with him. We can do anything for and with him. But I also explain to people what this does is it helps me escalate his voice. It doesn't take away his voice, in my opinion. Whereas some people think, I don't want to take away from my child. But at the same time, depending on the condition, my son has not made a major decision for himself in all of his life. Miraculously, when he turns 18, I don't see that changing.
Right. That's not going to all of a sudden change.
But we do talk to him about what's going on with him. We do ask his opinion, and he does have preferences about what he wants to have happen to his body. And we respect that. But if there's something that overarchingly he has to have done, we have to work through that fear.
Yeah.
And if we didn't have these papers, if he sat in a doctor's office and he said no, the doctor would have to respect that decision and not do it.
Exactly.
That is the law.
Yeah, that's the law. Yeah, that's the law. That's otherwise.
Yeah. So, and he has some serious things that could happen with him. Like his airway could go at any given time. And of course he doesn't want to have a trach put back in. Of course not.
Of course not.
But then he can't breathe. So, and that's where some people need a better understanding. And there's also, each state has its own set of rules as to how you go about this. So there's a lot of learnings that have to happen, and there's a lot of outreach that has to happen. And people also say it's so expensive, but there are some lawyers that do this pro bono as well. And I also recommend to people that they start looking into this process when their person is 16, not as they are turning 18.
No, that's so smart. That's good advice, because a lot of those things can take a number of years. You want to be ready when you get to that point, not start getting ready when you get there, because then you're prolonging it, and then all of a sudden something can happen.
Exactly.
And then while you're setting things up.
Exactly. And they will also say, well, no one's ever asked me for those papers. They don't ask, but then when they do, and you don't have it, because I had a situation where one of the pharmacy companies, no one had ever asked me. And then when I called and asked about some information and tried to do some business with them, they said, well, you're not down as a legal guardian, so we can't talk to you. And I was like, oh, no, let me send you the papers with the legal stamp on them. And then they were like, oh, you have them. I'm like, and you should have them because they're in all his medical documentation. And they're like, okay, no. Let's look further. And I'm like, nope, let me send them to you. I'm not waiting for you to look. So the sheer fact that I had it, they were like, oh, okay. And I'm like, you never know when that question's going to pop up. And so all of my documents have support stamps on them and everything, and they're in the electronic health systems and everything. So I'm like, I'm not willing to take that chance. So I made sure that every I was dotted, every T was crossed, and all the documents are there. And I keep a copy with me wherever I go. In case I need it. I have it scanned into my phone. And because I don't want to take the risk that I can't provide for him.
Yeah.
If I need to.
If you need to. Yeah. So, I mean, you've never met my mom.
There's a lot to think about. There's a lot to think about.
It is. You really have to meet my mother. You would love her, because she is outside of you. She is the most diligent person about her healthcare. I am her caregiver at this point. I moved her in with me about 5 years ago. However, she's on top of everything. Like, there would just be times where I'm like to the point where she now has like a medical necklace that has a QR code where all of her important documents and everything, all the information that they need is just like,
we don't have that.
Like she has got
good. We don't have the QR code.
Yeah, pretty good. And I was like, I'm about to share that with Savine because like that's the next level. And unfortunately, she had an accident a couple of weeks ago, where she was she's normally riding around. She was up at a casino. She's normally riding around in a scooter, and she was actually walking and fell right on her face, and like busted her whole face. It was like a whole thing. And I happen to not be with her. I'm usually with her for everything, but she was on one of her trips. So but she tells me like later on afterwards and everything, she was like, yeah, I'm in the ambulance, and I gave the thing to scan, and they were like, what is this? But I mean, just the diligence, like that's the one thing, like outside of her, you're the only other person I know of like staying ready so you don't have to get ready, right? Like all the time, paperwork, documents, whatever you need to have, like it's there. And I think that's the most important part in terms of like the relationships you have to have with the medical community, because they don't always.
It is. And speaking to that, one of the things that I've learned is my son requires a lot, not just with the healthcare providers, but with durable medical supply companies.
Yes.
Like we just recently went through where his bed broke and he needs a new wheelchair. So I have to research all of that before I even go speak to people, because there are things that insurance companies will cover, and there are things that you have to fight for, you know, and if I don't start asking certain questions, you'll just get whatever you get. And I'm like, no. Does that chair tilt? Does that chair do this? He needs this on his bed because he's on a feeding tube and he has to be elevated at 30 degrees or else he'll aspirate, you know, and there are just all of these things that you have to learn and understand. So there is this thing called Abilities Expo for anybody that's out there, and it happens in a variety of different states. So look it up. It's called Abilities Expo. It is amazing. It is a warehouse of vans, wheelchairs, all types of equipment, and you can test out wheelchairs. If you know someone that's in a wheelchair, they fix wheelchairs for free. So if you're in a wheelchair or you know someone in a wheelchair, you understand that it takes at least almost 12 weeks to get a wheelchair fixed. And insurance is only pay for one wheelchair. So if that wheelchair breaks and you don't have a second wheelchair, if it's a school age child, they're either out of school or you have to rent one. And during COVID, the wheelchairs just weren't available. So it is a problem. It is a real problem. So this place, without a prescription, without anything, you can just go, and if it's a minor fix or something, they will fix it. And if you are networked in with the company that does your wheelchair, for example, there's Quantum, there's Permobile. If you know people there, or you know the person that helped order your wheelchair, here's what I would do. If you need like a new headrest or a new wheel, I would kind of low-key email them and be like, hey, I'm going to the expo. Are you going to be there? My person's wheelchair could use a new wheel. Can you bring one and put their name on it on the side? And they'll give you a chair while you're there and have your equipment set aside for you while they fix your chair. This is their way of giving back to the community. Every year I try and go to the expo, and I try and save up all my fixes that I can when I go to the expo. They won't do things like joysticks because those are major fixes. But like headrests, extra armrests, and different things like that, they will try and task. And I would, if I were anybody, I would try and get there early, get my place, and just, it saves you so much time, so much aggravation. And if you're like me, I'm usually at a Home Depot or a Lowe's trying to get extra screws. I would ask them, do you have a couple of
some
extra screws that I can have? And we low-key become mechanics too. And the great thing about these places is they have all of this extra equipment. The vendors are there where you can try things, because we see things online and we're like, oh, that would be great. But they actually have it there and you can try it. And then you're like, no, that won't work. And then you haven't wasted your money or your time. Exactly. And they're so nice.
That is a good
They're
one.
wonderful. The people on two legs are the disabled people. when you're in that community.
Right.
It's like, they even have travel agents there that specialize in travel for people with disabilities.
Oh, I love
it's
that.
amazing. I
That's
try and go
amazing.
every year.
Yeah,
And if
that's
you're in the
amazing.
New York, New Jersey area, it's North Jersey. And it's called the New York Abilities Expo. It's Chicago. They have one out in
Chicago. Yeah, this
California.
one
They have
came
one
up
in
when
New
I
York.
came. Yeah, I think this is the primary one because this is the 2025
They also
one
have
that came up. Hold on a second. I'm gonna go to the
it's free. It's free
Yeah.
to go. You register and it's totally free. And they're not harassing you with spam or anything like that. They have lectures, they have dancers in wheelchairs. It's a fun time, let me tell you. It's crowded.
Yeah.
I just warn you about that. But it is a really good resource that I have found.
Yeah. I'm actually seeing it. If you just go to abilities.com and go to the Abilities Expos, they have one. The ones coming up are Houston, Phoenix, Fort Lauderdale, Dallas, Los Angeles, New York, and Chicago, and all the 2025 dates. I guess they're promoting the Chicago one, which is the one that came up with immediately when I went on there. But again, they just abilities.com and then click on the expos, and it has all of the different dates that are on there coming up for the rest of this year and 2025. So thank you.
Absolutely.
That actually will probably come in clutch for a whole lot of people who are going to watch this, up and including myself.
That, and I would check into, like, in this area where I'm at, since I'm Philadelphia area, Temple has an organization. I forget the name of it, and we can look into that. But you can actually rent things from there. You can get books that have the higher font count for people that have trouble reading. You can get audible books from there for people that are blind. So there are a lot of resources out there that people can take advantage of that you don't have to pay for. You can rent spoons. So if someone has Parkinson's and they have a trimmer, there's a spoon out there that you can do to help with the trimmer, and it stabilizes for the spoon so that they can eat. For people with cerebral palsy, there's that spoon too. There are a ton of resources, and some things are done by state, some things are federal. I haven't even gotten into, once the person turns 21, there's the waiver programs. So I would Google the waiver programs depending on the state that you're in to help. Because for me, once my son turned 21, insurance no longer helped with nursing. So he had to get accepted into a waiver program to help with the nursing. That is the only way that I'm able to work, is to have nursing. Because when COVID happened, the day programs basically shut down. And quite honestly, my son is not, a day program would not be the best thing for him, because I'm not sure if he would fully engage himself with the day programs. And working, it's not the best thing for him, because they wanted to say, oh, have him be a greeter at Walmart. Well, you know what? He needs help with everything. So who's going to take him there? Who's going to take him to the bathroom? Who's going to feed him while he's standing there trying to greet people at Walmart? And for his mental health, I'm not exactly sure that's the best thing for him to do. So, the system was not set up for him to have a job, at least not yet. We're still hopeful that there might be something out there for him that he can do. But I can tell you, he's really great at doing art and different things. So we're trying to help him develop his abstract art, and he's making custom Christmas bulbs, and they are amazing, if I can say so myself. So we're engaging him in different things that he's interested in doing. He loves basketball. So he goes to games with his dad. His dad is a high school basketball coach, and he loves to try and make up plays and goes to games. So we're doing different things, but we have been very blessed that he did get a waiver, and it is paying for his nursing, which gives me the ability to work. And we have the night nurse, which gives me the ability to sleep. So, but I still have to manage all of that too. So when a nurse doesn't show up, and get them to keep doing everything in just the right way.
So I wanted to read a comment that we have that came in, and then I'm just going to kind of move into some final thoughts, because we have 10 minutes left. But we have a comment from Connie that says, this is an amazing and informative conversation with great insights. Thanks so much to both of you for making it available to the public. This is inspiring for certain as someone living with complex medical needs and caring for loved ones with complex healthcare needs. We need these types of events more, and blessings forward. And then we have another comment from Jeffrey that says, great presentation, Savine. Are the Christmas ornaments available for purchase? I had that same question.
I need to work on that. We tried that. I have to figure out a way to do that. So if anyone has any insights, I didn't want to do Etsy. I'm thinking about an Instagram page, but on top of working full time, having Gabe full time, I need some help with that. So would love some help.
Okay, all right. Well, no one else volunteers and raise their hands. I know I can help you with that. So if we could just add it to one of our conversations later, because I had that same thought as well. So yeah, thank you. As soon as you said it, I was like, wait a minute, let's talk about these Christmas ornaments.
Awesome. But you'd be amazed. It started with, and I know we have to close out, I wanted him to have something functional to do with his hands. Yeah. And he loves color. So we started to create these bulbs, and my husband's managers, my husband is a banker. And so we gave them the bulbs during COVID as some handmade gifts. And now every year they request the bulbs from him. So, and then they take pictures. They have special sections on their trees. And so now they've been shipped to Canada, and they're in Australia from friends that are now requesting his bulbs. And so this year I decided to add metal stamping, so we can add his initials and the year on the bulbs. So, just to give him something that he's encouraged about, to show his worth, and they're created by or inspired by, so, it's just something fun and creative that his nurses work with him on it too, because they like getting into the whole creativity of it. And so he picks the colors, and then we work on it, and each one is unique and each one is different because of the color patterns. So
okay, I love that. So this is a whole thing, you guys. So I will promise that I'm going to work with her so that we can just make this a thing, and we can do it. So there'll be a follow-up of that maybe in the late October, November time frame, so we get our orders in.
And we're also getting him to do we have a connection on his wheelchair, because I would love for people to see the world through his eyes. So to put the camera on his wheelchair as we go, and have him start to do some photography, because he did take a photography class in school, and just have him start to get back into that, because you can see the screen on the back, and just put an extra little clicker on it, or have him do the picture through his iPad, with the camera, and have him do some of that work, just to get him out there and just have him do some different things.
Okay, so this is going to be an odd question, but is he into comics at all?
Yes. I
just spent this weekend at BlurredCon in DC, because little known fact, I'm big on it. No, it shouldn't be little known. I've actually put it on.
You know what he calls me because of my gray hair? Storm.
Yeah, yes. I mean, basically, you're walking around as Storm. And actually, I cosplayed Storm this weekend. But I wanted to tell you about BlurredCon, because BlurredCon, and just for anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's a Comic-Con convention for Black nerds, hence the term blurred. But this was the most warm and inviting event I think I've ever been to. They actually centered people of color, the LGBTQ community, and the disabled community. And the things they had set up for accommodations, up and including the most amazing ASL and sign language interpreters I've ever seen in my life. But the way that they accommodated so many different things, different types of photographers, but they had a lot of people who were out there who were just photographers in the food truck rally, just sitting there to take pictures of all these amazing cosplays. So if you don't put anything else on your account, you have to take him to that. BlurredCon.
Okay. Well, DC. It sounds like we have a date.
We have a date.
Connie is
March.
Connie is asking about the bulb, so I may have to send you some pictures, and you can post them as a follow-up.
I will. I absolutely will
Okay.
post them as a follow-up. It'll be right here with this conversation. So yeah, we will be doing that. And then you and I will be connecting about BlurCon March 7th to 9th. Put it on your calendar. We have to do
Okay,
this.
got it.
We have to be at that next year. So yeah, we're wrapping up. I just want to get into like some final thoughts. I mean, for me, I'm gonna give you the stage for them because my final thoughts is just like, again, the amount of admiration and love that I have for you and your family is beyond anything. And again, thank you so much for doing this. What are your final thoughts to leave everybody with before we close up?
My final thought is just be open to the possibilities of, this is Pride Month. People with disabilities, we call them go abilities. We call them exceptional. I call him an exceptional person because all of us are on a journey, and my son is on his own journey. I call myself a forever caregiver because he will be with me for as long as either one of us is alive.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, at some point in my life, I'd like to share my resources that I've developed. I do it every day. I help whoever I can help. And he also, in turn, helps whomever he can help. He doesn't see himself as being disabled because guess what? He's just differently abled. And this is his life's journey. You know, we put that label on people. He doesn't know it. You know, this is just like us. We get up every day and we do what we do. That's what he does. He just needs different accommodations to make it happen. And I think if we reframe the picture and we reframe the discussion, we will all learn that, you know, it is what it is. And we're all just trying to accomplish things and goals in life. And we'll all be the better for it. You know, so look at what we have in common and not always what we have that's different. And that's how I live my life. And that's how I approach people. And I think I'm the better for it. And I think I put that in the work that I do, in the diversity work that I do, because I think it's important. And I thank you all for being a part of this today. And I'm just inspired to keep doing what I do and help as many people as I can.
Yeah, definitely. I just wanted to put up this comment from Adrian because I share this sentiment. You know, thank you so much. This was an informative conversation, wealth of information, and you're an amazing mommy and advocate. You absolutely are. So I wanted to make
Thanks,
sure
Adrian. We grew up together. Adrian and I grew up together. Yeah.
Yeah. So she knows the magic that is Savine then. She's been witnessing that for a while. Well, again, thank you so much. Thank you to everyone. Again, this is recorded, so it will live on LinkedIn. It will also live on YouTube as well. You can follow LeaderKeys. It's LeaderKeys Unlocked on all socials, so it'll be on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. And if you ever need anything in terms of support for your career, for your business, whatever it is, that's what LeaderKeys is all about. We have these authentic and unapologetic conversations because we want to bring like real talk into these things, especially in this world and in this climate. We just need to detach and just hear and celebrate each other. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, Savine. Everybody have a wonderful and blessed day.
Thank you. Thank you so much.